In today's show, Tyler Metcalf from No Ceilings joins the program, and we talk about prospects we like more than others and prospects we don't like as much as others. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. We're battling the consensus. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's episode, a fun one. First-time guest to the program, Tyler Metcalf of No Ceilings. The gang over there doing wonderful draft work at noceilings.com. Tyler, how you doing?
Mike, I'm awesome. Draft is rapidly approaching. Finals seem to be winding down. Really fun time of the year, parsing through the rumors and the smoke screens and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun. How are you?
It is indeed.
Appreciate
We're less than 3 weeks away, or less than 2 weeks away. But
yeah.
I believe as you're listening to this, dear listeners, 12 days away. So for folks like Tyler who are going to really have to get into it, it's crunch time. It is crunch time to pour over. And for the casuals like me, I'm just reading stuff. I'm doing a little more reading than I normally would. In today's show, we're going to kind of mix things up a little bit. Instead of talking about sort of the same handful, 5, 6, 7 guys that we've been focusing on for the Blazers in the lottery. I'm going to get Tyler's opinion on some prospects he's higher on the consensus and prospects he's a little lower on in the consensus. And then to close the show, Blazers held a public draft workout today with some potential lottery guys that could be in the range. And we'll talk about that workout to close the show. But let us start with a prospect you're higher on than the consensus. This can be anybody. Based on what you've seen and all the draft boards you read, Tyler, who do you like more than other folks out there?
And so for a while, it was Stephen Castle, who I've had at 1 for a while now. But it seems like that's some people are trending that way while others are trending the other way. There doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of middle of the road with him. But the one clear guy that I feel like I'm way higher than everyone else is AJ Johnson. He played for the Illawarra Hawks. I have him at like middle of the first right now. And pretty much everywhere you're going to see mid-second. But I would be kind of surprised at this point if he doesn't end up going first round. Super raw, really talented kid. The numbers with the NBL were awful. Ignore them. Don't look at the numbers because you're going to look at them and you're going to be like, what are you talking about? This dude doesn't deserve to play a minute, but super athletic, really raw, really talented kid. And reminds me a lot of a guy on your guys' team, Anthony Simons, and kind of his road to the NBA.
So why do you, when you say throw out the numbers, give me the broad strokes. If I am looking at the numbers, like, yeah, I sort of, for me, a casual, I've never understood it. Tell me what you like that maybe others are missing or what you think you're seeing.
Yeah. So he played like 3 minutes a game or something with Illawarra. He, to put it bluntly, he kind of got screwed in that system where they just didn't play him at all. But when they did play him, when he was out there, the effort was always there. He was always playing really hard. He was always really intentional about what he was doing. He was committed to doing the little things. And a guy who was, I think, 5-star recruit, originally slotted to go to Texas, for him to go to the NBL and then play 3 minutes a game, but then still have that effort, still have that intentionality, still have that focus on doing the little things that you expect from a player that contributes to winning basketball. That was really big for me in terms of speaking to his mentality and his willingness to play and his desire to play and get better. So he's still really skinny, still has to get a lot stronger. But once he does, I really think the athletic tools are going to pop. Even in his limited minutes, there were some awesome flashes of offensive creation and handle and shooting and playmaking where it's like, oh, okay, this is the guy that we saw in high school who was a really highly touted point guard athletic recruit who was supposed to go to Texas and then decommitted, went to the NBL. There's just so much potential there, and that's really the thing. It's like if you're patient, if a team is patient with him, if I only had one pick in the first round, probably wouldn't use it on him because he is going to be a longer term project, kind of like Anthony Simons was, where you kind of just throw him in the G League, let him develop physically, let him get used to the physicality and the speed of play, let him get minutes, figure out how to play, and then ease him in, keep him around the team, get him used to that culture. There's so much upside with him, though. And he is skinny, but he still plays physical. He doesn't shy away from contact. And I think it's a lot easier to add muscle and improve the frame than it is to change a mentality.
Yeah, I do think playing hard is a skill that guys that we think we tend to think like, oh, they'll just turn it on. Some guys are wired to play hard, some aren't.
Yeah.
And I liken it to like keeping your elbow in on jumpers. Some guys, when they take a jump shot, have to say, okay, I really got to keep my elbow in. I got to get my base clean. So they're thinking through a jump shot. If you're thinking through playing hard, you are not playing hard. I really do think it's a skill. AJ Johnson, 6'5", 160. 160. That's a skinny person.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think shout out to Texas losing both Holland and Johnson from that recruiting class. That probably would have been probably a little more talented. What is his like general range? You said like if you have him as a first round guy, where is he? Where do you mostly see him?
So like most of the mock drafts and stuff that you'll see from other outlets, he'll be early to mid second round. I would be surprised if he fell out of the top 40, and it wouldn't shock me if a team kind of in that 20 to 30 range used a second round or like their second first round pick on him to get that extra year on the contract, to get that 5 guaranteed years, give themselves a little longer leash, a little more kind of runway to develop him, and then still reap the benefits of investing that time and resources into him. So I'm leaning towards that kind of 25 to 30 range. I think a team will jump in for him, but it would kind of surprise me if he falls out of that top 40 to 45 range where we typically see guys get more guaranteed contracts.
Yeah, Blazers have 34 and 40. They're a little tied up in terms of NBA contracts, particularly if they take both of their first round picks.
Yeah,
they're probably going to make some trades, and so it'll take care of itself. But they would probably have all 3 of their two-way spots open, and I think there's a world in which they try to sign both of their second round picks to two-way spots. I think that is very realistic. And maybe Johnson could be that guy. Okay, you mentioned Stephon Kessel. I like him too. I think he was. When I was pitching you on this idea for a show, he was the kind of guy, because I'd watched your film breakdown of him. If he's a point guard, I think he's a really interesting player. He's probably not an NBA point guard, least not early on in his career. He's probably not an NBA point guard, although his camp certainly wants him to be an NBA point guard. Shout out to the representation. What did you see early that you said, okay, Stephon Kessel is really good? Because for me, what popped was the defensive versatility. But what else for you have you seen?
So with UConn, it was immediately just the defense being incredible from go.
Yeah.
And coming out of high school, he was not a good defender. At least I didn't. I was really underwhelmed with his defensive tape in high school, and it was like, oh God, like, okay, like you're kind of this creative, offensive engine. You're physical. You have really good positional size, but you're a mediocre shooter at best, and you're not defending. Like, what are you? And then he goes to UConn and plays a completely different role. He's a completely different person on the court, and him proving that it's like, okay, I can be this offensive engine. I can also be this role player who is arguably the best perimeter defender in the country. And then I can also be an awesome rebounder and passer and play finisher and cutter and do all the little things. It's like, okay, this is a complete player. And the detractors are they're always going to point to the shot. And it's a very legitimate concern. I have concerns about it too. But generally, guys of his caliber, lottery picks, who shot under 30%, the vast majority of them end up improving somewhat. And when I say improving somewhat, I mean like 35-ish career 3-point percentage. And I think if he can get to that, I think that's more than enough, because he's incredibly smart. He doesn't force stuff. He doesn't play outside of who he is. And as the year went on, we saw that confidence in the shot grow steadily. So I don't think he's ever going to be Steph Curry, but I don't think he has to. I don't think he has to be this lethal shooter. and I think the mid-range game is going to come along. Nothing with the mechanics look horrible to me. You know, there's some small tweaks here and there, but I don't think anything has to be reworked. And I have him at 1 because I do view the upside as that kind of Jimmy Butler type of player where he's really physical, really dominant on the defensive end. And is he going to be this awesome outside shooter? Probably not. But is he going to be awesome at basically everything else? I think so. And in this draft, I'd be really excited to take that swing at 1.
Yeah, I don't think he's a great fit in Portland is the only reason I haven't
Yeah,
talked about him a bunch
agreed.
on the show, because it's like they've invested in a lot of guys that play similar spots. Like even if assuming they trade Malcolm Brogdon, they still got 3 youngsters with Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, and Anthony Simons that kind of would be in a similar spot as him. Even if they
Yeah,
trade Anthony Simons, the last 2 drafts they've invested in guards. Would it make sense to go 3 straight guard types? He probably can't play 3 with consistency. I mean, maybe eventually, but not early. And I feel the same way about Shaden Sharp. Like he could play a little bit of 3, but you kind of want plus length there, particularly if you're going to play Scoot Henderson at point guard. You want plus length. You don't want like guys who are passively small forwards. You want actual size at those spots. That's like the ideal version of the Blazers. But Castle, I really like. I really like as a passer. When they got to the Final Four and Alabama said, this dude can't shoot, let's dare him to shoot. He won the game in the first half. He said,
yeah,
he said, so I get to take practice jump shots in the NCAA Final Four? Tight. And he
yeah,
nailed them, and it totally changed the calculation for Alabama. And it kind of, he might not get that full on treatment. Not everyone is Nate Oates, but like, I'm with you. I see a world in which he is like 35 is like slightly below league average. I think league average is like just under 37 this year because everybody shoots threes.
right.
Goodness gracious. 35% with other tools. I'm with you. He would have been my guy as well. Let's talk let's just put on take a sip of Haterade. I saw you had a little cup on the side there. Take a sip of Haterade. Let's talk about some players that we're lower on than the consensus. Join us in that second segment and we will do just that. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and your favorite players. You just pick more or less than 2 or more player stats. You get a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. That's turning $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports all summer long. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week. From lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. So go have some fun. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. They're going to match you dollar for dollar up to $100 on your first deposit match. You just got to use that promo code LOCKEDONNBA. It's Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, still chatting here with Tyler Metcalf of No Ceilings. So we talked about some prospects you were higher on the consensus in the first segment. Let's shift gears. Who are some folks that are higher up on the draft boards that you see, higher up in mocks that you see that maybe you don't have as warm and fuzzy feelings about when you watch them on tape?
Oh God. All right. So the obvious one for me is Modest Buzelis.
Okay.
This Ignite team this year was brutal. It was a really poorly constructed team, and neither him or Ron Holland were done any favors. And I think it really reflected in their years where they were asked to do a lot, and it didn't work. I know they put up some really good numbers in some games, but the process of what they went through, I was really, really underwhelmed. Now, to Modest's credit, I was really impressed with the defense. I thought the defense was much better than I was anticipating. The way he moved his feet laterally, the footwork was really good. The kind of help rim protection was really good. But like his rotations were kind of inconsistent, and I'm just not sold that he has the lateral foot speed to like actually guard wings. And offensively, he didn't shoot. And the whole sales pitch of him coming out of high school is he's this 6'9", 6'10" lethal shooter. And even going back to his high school's shooting stuff, it all felt pretty mundane. to me, whereas a lot of standstill stuff is a lot of just being bigger and shooting over smaller defenders. I was never really sold on the offensive creation, the self creation. And if he's not going to shoot it, then I don't know what he really gives you on offense. But this is where it's like, okay, in a lesser role where he's not asked to do all of the self creation and offensive creation, and he has an actual point guard, and now he's the fourth option on offense when he's out there. Does that kind of give him more juice to his legs? Because that jump from high school 3-point line to NBA 3-point line, that's a big one. So the drop in 3-point percentage wasn't shocking, but it was a big drop. So when he's asked to do less, do we see the efficiencies rise? And that's where I hope it kind of comes. And, like when we look at team fits, while I might be a little lower on him, if he went to a place like Portland, a post-draft kind of big board, he might rise up a little bit, because when we're looking at offensive creation stuff, he's not going to be asked to do anything, because Scoot,
Right.
Shaden, Anthony, Jeremy Grant, all those guys, Malcolm Brogdon, DeAndre Ayton, he'll be playing exclusively off them. So will that preserve his legs a little bit more? Another year at that line, another year of strength and conditioning. Does he have that energy, that strength to be that better shooter that a lot of people build him as? That's where I get a little more excited about him. So in a vacuum, I'm a little lower on him than most, but like Blazers specific, I see it and get a little bit more excited about it.
Yeah, he is actually a decent fit in terms of his archetype with the Blazers, right?
Yeah.
He's big. He could probably, I mean, he's so skinny. So he's probably not an NBA 4 this fall. Like, he's not a power forward in the NBA in October, but he could, like, as some of my older listeners will know, it's pretty easy to put on weight as you age. that one's pretty simple. But like, I think his frame could fill out, and then he's like a 4. He's pretty good end-to-end athlete. It's just like, what does he do in the half court? I'm with you. I saw him once in person when the Ignite played the remix, and the physicality of the G League was too much for him. Like, he just couldn't hang. They would try to post him up, and he'd go like mid-block, and he'd end up catching it at 19 feet. And it's like, okay, well, that's actually not a great, you didn't just gain an advantage by posting a guy up at 11 feet. And then by the time you catch it and square, you're now, a step and a half inside the 3-point line. In that same game though, he crashed from the corner and caught a ball above the square and dunked home a rebound. And it's like, oh, that's the thing people like. It's like, I watched him play. I thought he was pretty bad in that game. Like, if I joked, like, it's like, if I didn't know anyone's name coming in, if it's like there's no names on the back of the jerseys and you're just watching kind of blind, you wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, the big kid, like, he's good. You would have no idea. You would have been like, yeah, that dunk was cool, but otherwise, and he had like maybe an end-to-end layup that was like, oh yeah, someone at his size who can dribble. That's pretty intriguing. But it's like, he shot bricks and he got pushed around, and it's like, and that's like a one game scout, but I'm saying just like immediate first impressions. But I could understand being a little lower on him. Also, like, at one point he was supposed to be the number 1 pick in the draft, right? Like, he was supposed to be, this was before the Ignite season. It was like, Matas Buzelis, he's not going to go to college. Should have gone to Carolina, go Tar Heels, but he's not going to go to college. Like, he's going to go the professional route, and this is like a number 1 pick in the draft type. This is like when the good people at the 4-Letter Network were like touting that the Ignite had 7 first-round draft picks on the roster. So the hype has changed a little bit. The hype has changed. I can see being down on him though, because the shooting is such a weird thing, right? It's like, if a guy isn't an on-ball creator, right? Then most players in the wing, most players on the wing, like, the value you're going to have is being able to be a standstill shooter. Like, that's just the archetype in the league. Like, we're getting to a place where unless you're really creative as a passer and ball handler, you have to be able to shoot moderately well. And he was a straight up bad shooter. Like, he was just bad at it. I wonder if there is, okay, let's assume that he's always a low level shooter. Is there another skill he could add that you feel like could get him to like NBA starter level in the nearish future?
The defense would have to be awesome. And it took steps towards that this year. The defense was way better, but again, like, he just doesn't have. I don't know what he does offensively, because he doesn't have that quick twitch explosiveness where he's creating his own shot, and he didn't do that really in high school. He didn't do that at the ignite. Like you said, he has some vertical pop where he has a straight line to the rim, whether it's in transition or offensive tip dunks. There's really good stuff there. There's some optimism with his passing, but if he can't really create for himself and if he's not really shooting, does the passing do anything for you? Because he's not going to be big enough to play five. So,
Right.
it does make sense. I think he really has to shoot it. And, to his credit, I mean, this year he was sub 30% from three, but with Sunrise Christian as in, his last year in high school, I believe he was like 43% from three. And sorry, just pulling, 43% from three on just over 100 attempts. But in his Nike EYBL circuit, he shot 29% on just under 70 attempts from three. So it's like, he's always been billed as this lethal shooter, but there's only been one season and one setting where he's done it. Can he? Of course. Yeah, I really hope he turns around and becomes a shooter, because if he does, then we're kind of talking about a really intriguing kind of 3-and-D piece at the forward position. I think he is exclusively a 4, which, makes lineup construction a little trickier, but I think he's going to, in time, be strong enough and be a good enough athlete where it makes sense. So I think it's, unfortunately, I hate having evaluations be dumbed down to this specific or this simplified, but a lot of the times it is. And it's like, if he doesn't ever shoot it over 30%, and that's a really, really low bar, then it's like, I don't know what you're giving me on offense. And at that point, I'm not sure the defense is so elite that
it would have to be exceptional,
massive playing
right?
Times. Yeah.
I will say the Blazers do have a lot of wings that can't shoot. Maybe that's their
they do. You guys have a lot.
maybe they just want to add another
You're cornering the market.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how many guys with like up, positional size who really can't shoot on offense can you play at one time? I think it's maybe an interesting little experiment they could run out here in Portland. Okay, the Blazers held a draft workout today. 6 guys coming into the practice facility, a public draft workout where they announced the names as opposed to some secret ones they've held over the last couple of weeks. Let's talk about who worked out for the Blazers and get Tyler's opinion on a couple of them. We'll do that to close the show. Join us in the third segment, won't ya? First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. And it gives you access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else because it's LinkedIn. And they do all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you've got that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours of posting on LinkedIn Jobs. There's already 2.5 million small businesses using LinkedIn for hiring. So join the gang. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Still chatting with Tyler Metcalf of No Ceilings. Okay, so the Blazers held a draft workout on Thursday. You're listening to your listeners to Friday, June 14th show. Appreciate you listening. We do it 5 days a week wherever you get podcasts. Free on all your platforms, including YouTube. Blazers held a draft workout on Thursday. Tristan da Silva from Colorado. Nikola Djurisic from Mega. Kyle Filipowski from Duke. David Jones of Memphis. Pelle Larsson from Arizona. And Jameer Young from Maryland. I don't think Jameer Young's likely to get drafted. David Jones is a second-roundy type. Pelle Larsson's a second-roundy type that could definitely be in a wing forward from Arizona. Definitely could be in the Blazers range at 34 and 40. But I want to talk about those first 3 guys, Da Silva, Djurisic, and Filipowski. Let's start with Da Silva. I think he's a name that folks like. This is like one of those names that is like, people are like, oh, okay, the more I watch it, draft folks, the more I watch it, this is a first rounder. This is a fringe lottery guy. Are you a Da Silva believer?
Yeah, I have him top 10.
Wow. Okay.
And, when we were just talking about Buzelis, where it's like, oh man, could he even become Tristan da Silva? Or it's like, why not just take da Silva and get it in the building right away? The tricky thing with da Silva is like, none of his numbers are like, holy crap, that's outstanding.
Sure.
but they're all really good. And they've all been really good to above average for basically his entire career. And so much of what he does doesn't show up in the box score necessarily, where he is one of the best team defenders in this class. His rotations, his versatility, his ability to kind of switch pick and rolls, to hard hedge and recover, to rotate from the weak side and stay vertical without fouling, to jump passing lanes. It's incredible. And then offensively, 87th percentile as a spot up shooter, really good rebounder, really good connective passer. The ball doesn't stick with him. He's a quick decision maker, quick processor. I'm a huge Tristan da Silva fan.
He does seem to fit what the Blazers need. They need more shooting on the wing, desperately. 28th in 3-point accuracy last year, and they were relatively low in volume. Although the volume thing, and every team in the league shoots between 30 and 43s.
Yeah.
So it's like you're talking like 4 more attempts per game. You jump up into the top half. They could use more playmaking. Like they don't have that. So another connective passer. It's like Jeremy Grant doesn't really pass. So they could use that skill set. I do wonder their thinking front office wise. Is Tristan da Silva, is he old? Is he ancient? He's just a man in his 20s, a 23-year-old adult. No, that couldn't possibly be. Obviously they drafted Chris Murray last year, so maybe they don't care about it. But I wonder, like, if at 14 or if, with both their lottery picks, if they're just upside over everything, right? And they just want to draft for what players can be because they got to shoot for the moon, and they don't. And like the idea of like, this is a productive player, but we don't see him becoming more than a role player doesn't appeal to them. But like, how many guys in this league have upside? How many guys in their draft range at 7 and 14? And this is kind of what I'm warming up to. I think I've kind of warmed up to the idea of Dalton Connect in the same way. It's like, sure, maybe this doesn't have like, he doesn't have star player in the league upside because it's just like, he's already close to what he's going to be and he's just going to sharpen his tools. Some of the guys you're drafting with upside, you hope that they become role players in the league. Like that's like, what are you hoping that Matsu Pazelis and Ron Holland become? I think that's, it's the same thing. So I feel similarly on Da Silva as you. But I'm just curious what the Blazers might do. Let's talk Filipowski. I've seen him a bunch. I'm a Carolina guy, ACC guy. I don't think he's an NBA, like high level NBA player. He's just, like, what position does he play? He's like a big, slow 4. What are your thoughts on Flip? I will say, at the high school level, a darling of NBA draft prognosticators. He was supposed to be the next guy, and I think at Duke, he showed to be a guy more so.
I'm a little lower on him. You kind of consistently see him like late lottery, middle of the first. I have him more towards the end of the first, like early 20s. I don't know how he scores or because he's supposed to shoot it. The shot looks good. Yep. It hasn't fallen. It doesn't fall. So I'm just kind of at the point of I need to see it with him with the shot. And, it looks good. Hopefully it goes in one day, but for the last 2 years, it hasn't gone in. His interior game, and he's got a decent handle for his size. He can attack closeouts, but again, if he's not shooting at an NBA level, guys aren't going to close out on him. So that ability to attack closeouts vanishes. A lot of his kind of interior scoring is him just throwing his body into his defender's chest and being super physical and trying to play bully ball. That gets you through 90% of college competition. That doesn't really pass in the NBA. What he does, he's an awesome passer at.
He is a good passer.
So offensively, you have that with him where you can run some really fun, creative, pick and roll, DHO stuff with him, have him initiate from the top of the key, the elbows, the post, wherever. He's going to be a really good passer. And then defensively, I'm just not sold on the rim protection. And he moved a lot better in space, I thought, this year defensively. He had that hip surgery. When you talk about a 20-year-old having hip surgery, never ideal, but he was moving a lot better this year than he was last year. So that's encouraging. I'm just not sure he's a full-time center defensively. Awesome rebounder, plays super physical, which leads to him drawing a ton of fouls, but also him committing a lot of dumb fouls. So as like a backup 4 or 5, I'm intrigued with him, but when I keep seeing him mocked like end of the lottery, I'm like, I'm hoping for a starter at that range. And I'm just not quite sure he has that upside necessarily, unless he goes to like a couple very specific places.
Yeah, I kind of view him the same way. I think he has like pretty good feet in the post, but but he also like he got overwhelmed against DJ Burns and Armando Bacot. That's like the physicality of bigger centers in the ACC gave him a little bit of trouble. And that's what you're going to see at the pros, right? And so like then the footwork where he's like able to, okay, I can get on balance and take fadeaways and get over the top of folks at 8 or 10 feet. And he's pretty good at that. It's hard to do that when you're getting overpowered. So I wouldn't be surprised if Filipowski's a pro. Like I would, like I could see him be a pro, but I have trouble seeing him as like an NBA starter because I do not view him as a center, but he's like center. He has the physical tools of a center. Otherwise, Nikola Djurisic, I feel like this is a pretty intriguing prospect who is like, if maybe he wasn't in this draft, would be relatively high up in the next one. What are your thoughts on him?
The big thing, he's kind of been on draft radars for the last 3 years. And the big thing with him was, God, is he ever going to shoot it? Is he ever going to shoot it? And up until these last 2 months, he hadn't. And then these last 2 months, he's been on an absolute tear with Mega. The shot has looked really good. It's been falling a ton. Really dynamic stuff, really creative on-ball creator and shot creator. And when the shot's falling, he looks awesome. But when it's not, and we only have like a 2-month sample size of it falling, it's like, oh boy, what are you giving me? Because the defense is pretty rough. The playmaking is awesome. Really good playmaker. But it's kind of this whole symptom with Mega where it's like their whole offense is kind of set up for whoever's the on-ball creator. They're allowed to shine, and boy, do they look good. We saw it with Nikola Topic, and I don't think Djurisic has the juice to be an on-ball NBA creator. The threshold for that is so stinking high. You have to be so good, and it's like the top 2% of the league is afforded that leash, and I don't think he's going to get there. I don't think that's a slight. But when we talk about him as like an off-ball guy, I'm not sure I've seen the consistency with the off-ball movement, the movement shooting, the consistency shooting off the catch, the cutting, all of that kind of stuff. He's pretty stagnant once he's off the ball, but the ability, if the shot off the catch really does get there, if these last 2 months have been real and that development is there, then it's like, okay, this is a guy that you could potentially steal at the end of the first, early second to be this kind of, this Bojan Bogdanovic-esque type of bench creator where you can bring him in, have him run the second unit, have him be this kind of fun, dynamic scorer. And if the defense is really killing you, if the shot's not falling, you yank them and you kind of know how it's going to go pretty quickly and no harm, no foul. So I think the intrigue is there where it's like, yeah, top 40 draft pick. Sure. Why not? But if you're just looking at the last 2 months, he looks like a top 20 pick. If you take in the last 2 years, it's more like second round flyer. Let's see how real these recent shooting developments are.
Yeah, I think he's pretty intriguing at 34. I can't imagine that his people agree to a 2-way contract. So I think it's
probably not.
So like if you want him on the team, you're probably, and then second round, I think this year, especially with day 2 of the second round, you're going to see a lot of, this would never happen, but I think there's going to be a lot of negotiations that happen before folks are on the clock, where you kind of know what your deal is when by the time you're drafting him. This obviously, like, teams don't tamper. That doesn't happen in the league. It's not like
never
incredibly rampant and like basically the qualification for running an NBA team. But like I wonder, it's like, if the Blazers clear up roster spots for him, I think like a 6'7", 20-year-old who can maybe shoot and go get his own bucket is like so tantalizing at 34, so that's like, that's what they need, right? They need another player of size who can go score. That's like kind of the archetype that they're after. They could use everything. They're kind of light on talent, but like specifically that I think is really intriguing for him. And so that's like that's a name that I would circle, but I think you would have to give him an NBA deal. Like, I think you'd have to clear a roster spot for him and give him an NBA deal. Okay. The last 2 guys I want to ask you about real quick. David Jones is, every time that I see like here's the best analytics player in college basketball, David Jones from Memphis is always on the list. And I'm like, who is this guy? Who is David Jones?
He's a solid player. I'm not completely sold on the NBA upside with him. I'm not sure I totally buy the shot. But everything you hear about him is that he's an awesome kid, awesome worker, awesome teammate. So, that alone, if you're able to shine and, really shoot well in a workout and impress front offices when you sit down and talk to them and you interview well, a lot of the time that's enough to at least get you in the second round. So if he ends up going second round or being one of the kind of first UDFA guys, it wouldn't totally shock me. I'm not sure I would draft him just purely based off of the production and kind of talent. The age is a little concerning for me too, just how much upside is there left. And if the shot still hasn't taken that leap yet, it's like, okay. So potential kind of two-way guy for me right now.
Yeah, 6'3" college senior. I do think Blazer fans would riot, but but whatever. It's that I think the riot is maybe good for content. Pelle Larsson from Arizona. I was intrigued by him, and then I watched the final couple games of Arizona, and I was like, maybe I'm not as excited. He feels like a connective forward, like with some passing stuff. Do you think he's a second round talent?
Yes, he's been one of the most frustrating college basketball players over the last 2 years for me. Because when he's playing well, he looks awesome. He is a stud. He's knocking down shots. He's passing. He's slashing. He's attacking the rim. He's defending at a high level. But those games seem to come once every 10 games, and there just isn't that consistency there. So when you catch him on a good night, it's like, oh my God, why isn't this guy a first rounder? He looks awesome. And then you'll watch him literally the next game, and it's like, oh, I forgot he was on the court. And it's so frustrating because guys who are that talented, you're like, come, like, give me, like, I know what you're capable of. You just showed me. Where did
Right.
it go? And that's just kind of how his whole college career has unfortunately gone, at least in my eyes. So again, if he gets in a workout, he's shooting well, he's knocking stuff down, he looks awesome. You turn on the right game, you watch the right highlight clip, you're like, God, this dude rocks. He is so good. He was, one of the main pieces on a really good Arizona team. Why wouldn't we spend a top 40 pick on him? It wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't spend a first on him. If he goes second, be like, okay. It's just that level of inconsistency just really, really frustrates me.
Yeah, it's hard to know with those guys, right? Is it just if he was in the right setting, you could maximize him, right setting, right role, maximize him, or is it just like so the plight of human existence is that you can't be your best self all the time? So he's an intriguing one. Tyler, thanks so much for joining the program. It was a whole bunch of fun.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
If folks are looking for more of your work, where can they find it?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at tmetcalf11. All of our stuff is over at noceilingsnba.com. Basically everything we do is free. There's also a paid tier that gets you access to our private Discord where we share intel and have Q&As, and you can talk with us whenever you want. And we will be launching a draft guide soon as well. Not entirely sure on the price of that. I think it's like $10 ish, give or take. But that should be coming out next week. Yeah, so noceilingsnba.com.
Check it out. Tyler does great work, and the whole gang at No Ceilings are going to make you smarter about the draft. And look, you only got 2 weeks left. It's time to get smart. It's time to do it. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. We'll do 5 more of these next week. You're not getting this with other Blazer podcasts. So if you want to find it, come back and get it, and then tell your friends to do the same. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.